Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're taking you to a spot that's perfect for anyone who loves nature, a good hike, or just incredible views.
And that's Inspiration Peak in Minnesota, right?
You got it. We're talking stunning landscapes, unique plants, and even a little bit of literary history, all packed into one amazing location.
It's like the ultimate trifecta for nature lovers, history buffs, and, well, anyone who appreciates a truly epic view.
Exactly. And to guide us on this deep dive, we've got a whole stack of sources, YouTube videos, Wikipedia articles, and even some first-hand accounts from All Trails reviews.
So we're getting a 360-degree perspective, just like the views from the peak itself.
Okay, so let's set the scene. Imagine yourself in Otter Tail County, about 22 miles northwest of Alexandria, Minnesota. You're surrounded by these rolling hills, and then boom, rising up from the landscape. You see it. Inspiration Peak.
Yeah, you really can't miss it. It stands tall at 1,727 feet above sea level.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
It is. And it gets even more impressive when you consider how it was formed. This peak is what's called a glacial came.
Glacial came.
Yep. It means it was formed by deposits from glaciers way back during the last ice age.
So we're talking thousands of years of history sculpted into this peak.
Over 10,000 years, to be precise. And it's actually part of a larger system called the Leaf Hills Moraines, which tells a story of these massive glaciers shaping the land as they melted and retreated.
So it's like a giant ice sculpture that's been slowly melting and changing over time.
Pretty much. But here's where it gets really interesting. Inspiration Peak isn't even the highest point in Otter Tail County anymore.
Wait, what? There's something taller nearby.
You bet. In 2022, a surveyor was using this technology called LiDAR, and they discovered a peak that had never been mapped before. They named it Pecan Peak, and it's a whopping 1,800 feet.
Wow, so Inspiration Peak got dethroned.
In a way, yes. But don't worry, Inspiration Peak still holds a special place in our hearts, especially for those who love a good story.
Okay, now you've got me hooked. What's the story behind Inspiration Peak?
Well, the name itself is a clue. The story goes that Nobel Prize-winning author Sinclair Lewis was so captivated by the views from this peak that he was inspired to write about it.
Now that's what I call a view with a view.
Right, so it's not just the geology that's impressive, it's the impact this place has had on people's creativity.
Okay, so we've got the height, we've got the history, but what about the actual experience of being there? What makes Inspiration Peak so special for hikers and nature enthusiasts?
Oh man, where do we even begin? Let's start with the views. On a clear day, you can see for miles, up to 20 or even 30 miles, according to some sources.
Wow, so we're talking about seeing tiny towns in the distance, rolling hills stretching out before you, and I'm guessing lots and lots of lakes.
Oh, you bet. Over 50 lakes to be exact, sparkling like scattered jewels across the landscape.
That sounds absolutely incredible. It's like a panoramic postcard come to life.
That's a great way to put it. And get this, Sinclair Lewis himself described it as a glorious 20-mile circle of some 50 lakes scattered among fields and pastures like sequins fallen on an old paisley shawl.
Okay, that is officially going on my list of inspiring travel quotes. But it's not just about the distant views, right? What about the nature right there on the peak itself?
This is where Inspiration Peak gets really interesting for plant lovers and anyone who appreciates biodiversity. You see, the peak boasts this really unique combination of biomes. At the base, you have this lush oak forest creating a cool, shady canopy.
Okay, I can picture that.
But as you ascend, the landscape transforms into a dry sand prairie.
A dry sand prairie. That's not something you see every day, especially in Minnesota.
You're absolutely right, and that's what makes it so special. This dry sand prairie is a rare and fragile habitat. It's home to a variety of plant species that you won't find in many other places.
So it's like a little island of unique plant life right up there at the top.
Exactly. Think vibrant pasque flowers in the spring, blazing stars and asters in the summer, and goldenrod adding a touch of gold to the fall landscape.
It sounds like a botanist's dream. Okay, so we've got stunning views, rare habitats, and a literary legacy. What's not to love? But let's get practical here. What can our listeners actually expect when they hit the trail to the top?
Well, the main trail to the summit is a 0.5-mile loop, so it's a relatively short hike, perfect for a quick adventure or even a lunch break escape.
Short, but I bet it's a good workout, especially with that elevation gain.
You got it. It's rated as moderate difficulty, mainly because it's quite steep in sections. You'll definitely feel those leg muscles working, but trust me, the views are worth every step.
They say the best views come after the hardest climbs, right? So what about the trail itself? What's the terrain like?
Well, part of the trail is paved, which makes it accessible for a wider range of hikers, but there are also sections that are uneven or even have some missing pavement.
So good hiking boots are a must.
Definitely. You want to make sure you have good ankle support and sturdy footwear.
It sounds like this trail is a good mix of accessibility and a bit of ruggedness, which is perfect for those who want a little bit of a challenge without being too strenuous.
Exactly. And remember, you're rewarded with those incredible views along the way. Now let's sprinkle in some anecdotes and quotes from the sources to really bring the experience to life, shall we?
Yes. Let's hear some firsthand accounts from those who have conquered Inspiration Peak.
Well, there was this one All Trails review that really stood out to me. A hiker mentioned that their 7-year-old found a unique key at the top.
A key? Like an old-fashioned key?
Yeah, it was described as unique. So who knows what it unlocks? It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Maybe there's a treasure hidden somewhere up there, just waiting to be discovered.
Oh, a hidden treasure. That's a great way to add a little extra excitement to the hike. And talk about a core memory for that 7-year-old.
Yeah.
Okay, what else did we find in those reviews?
Well, remember that news report from WCCO? They interviewed several visitors, and the overwhelming sentiment was that Inspiration Peak exceeded their expectations. One hiker even said, "This is worth the climb," which I think perfectly sums up the experience. Simple, but powerful. It's a good reminder that sometimes the simplest phrases capture the essence of a place better than any lengthy description. But before our listener rushes off to pack their hiking boots, there's one more little historical tidbit we should share.
You're right. Remember how he mentioned that Sinclair Lewis was inspired by this peak? Well, it turns out that before he came along, Inspiration Peak was known as Leaf Mountain.
Leaf Mountain, really?
Yeah, it was his writings that really popularized the current name and solidified its place as a source of, well, inspiration.
So from Leaf Mountain to Inspiration Peak, it's like a literary makeover.
Exactly. And it just goes to show how powerful words and human connection can be in shaping our perception of a place.
It's amazing how name can change the whole feeling of a place. But I think it's safe to say that whether you call it Leaf Mountain or Inspiration Peak, this place has a certain magic about it.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the heart of this deep dive. Why should you, our fellow adventurer, care about Inspiration Peak? Let's shift gears and talk about what makes this peak so special for anyone who loves nature hiking or just escaping the everyday hustle.
Okay, so picture this. You're craving a dose of nature, a chance to disconnect and recharge. Inspiration Peak offers that escape. It's a place where you can challenge yourself physically with the hike, but also find tranquility amidst the beauty of the prairie and those sweeping views.
It's like hitting the reset button on your mind, right? Just breathing in the fresh air, feeling the sun on your face, and letting the worries melt away.
Exactly. And think about that sense of accomplishment you'll feel standing at the top knowing you conquered that climb. It's a reminder that you're capable of more than you think. It really is. And those views, they're not just pretty scenery, they're a perspective shift. Seeing the world from that vantage point, you realize how vast and interconnected everything is.
It's like suddenly seeing the bigger picture, right?
Exactly. And for those who love photography, well, let's just say Inspiration Peak is an Instagram dream.
Oh, I bet. Those fall colors, the rolling hills, the play of light and shadow. So many opportunities to capture those epic landscapes.
Endless opportunities. Okay, so we've established that it's beautiful, it's inspiring, and it offers a great workout. But let's get real for a minute. Our listeners probably thinking, is this hike right for me?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's one thing to hear about how great it is, but another to know if you can actually handle the trail.
Right, and that's where those All Trails reviews come in handy. Remember, it's rated as moderate, and while it's short, that steep incline can be challenging, especially if you're not a regular hiker.
Yeah, I can see how that would be tough for some people, but I did notice that some reviewers mentioned benches along the way.
You're right. There are benches strategically placed so you can take breaks, catch your breath, and soak in the scenery.
That's good to know. So it's not like you have to power through the whole thing without stopping.
Exactly. And the fact that it's a loop trail means you can go at your own pace. There's no pressure to turn back if it feels too tough.
That's a relief.
Yeah.
Plus, it sounds like it's rarely crowded, which is always a bonus.
Absolutely. You can really enjoy that sense of peacefulness and connection with nature.
No traffic jams on this trail.
Exactly. And speaking of trail buddies, if you're thinking of bringing your furry friend along, good news, it's dog friendly.
Oh, that's great.
Just remember to keep them on a leash and be mindful of other hikers.
Always important to be a responsible trail buddy. Speaking of which, anything else our listeners should keep in mind before heading out to Inspiration Peak?
A few things. Those All Trails reviewers were very clear. bring bug spray.
Ah, yes, the dreaded mosquitoes.
Especially if you're hiking in the summer months, they can be quite active.
Nothing ruins a good hike like a swarm of bugs.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I saw some mention of poison ivy, too.
You're right. Always a good idea to stay on the trail and maybe wear long pants just to be safe.
Good advice. And of course, pack plenty of water, especially on those warm days.
Absolutely. Staying hydrated is key for any outdoor adventure.
And maybe a snack or two for a little energy boost at the top.
That's a great idea. It's amazing how much tastier snacks are when you've earned them with a good hike.
So true. All right, so we've covered the practicalities, the history, the inspiration. What does this all mean for our listener?
It means they have a potential adventure waiting for them.
Right.
In their own state.
And not just any adventure, but one that offers breathtaking views, a chance to reconnect with nature, and maybe even spark a little creativity, just like it did for Sinclair Lewis.
You know, it's funny. We often think we have to travel far and wide to find these amazing experiences.
Right, like we need to jet off to some exotic location.
But sometimes the most inspiring experiences are closer than we think.
Absolutely. And Inspiration Peak is a perfect example of that. It's a reminder that beauty and wonder can be found right in our own backyards.
You hit the nail on the head. And think about this. You mentioned that our listener loves those panoramic views. Well, imagine yourself standing at the top of Inspiration Peak, wind in your hair, sun on your face, and those 50-plus lakes shimmering in the distance. Could that experience, that connection with nature's grandeur, spark a creative fire within you?
Ooh, I like where you're going with this.
Maybe a poem, a painting, a song, or even just a renewed sense of gratitude for the beauty that surrounds us?
It's like Inspiration Peak is whispering an invitation, urging us to tap into our own creativity.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe our listener will be inspired to embark on their own creative journey after visiting Inspiration Peak.
I love that idea. So it's not just about the hike, it's about the potential for something more.
It's about opening ourselves up to new possibilities and embracing the beauty that's all around us.
I think it's safe to say that Inspiration Peak is more than just a hike. It's an invitation to reconnect with nature, challenge yourself, and tap into a deeper sense of wonder.
And speaking of tapping into something deeper, remember that hidden key mentioned in the All Trails review?
Oh yeah, the one that the 7-year-old found.
What if it's not just a random lost key? What if it's a symbol of the hidden treasures that await us when we venture out into the world, when we push ourselves beyond our comfort zones?
I like that. It's like a metaphor for the unexpected discoveries we can make when we're open to new experiences.
Exactly. And who knows? Maybe our listener will be inspired to embark on their own treasure hunt after visiting Inspiration Peak.
Maybe they'll discover a hidden talent, a new passion, or simply a deeper connection with themselves and the natural world.
That's a beautiful thought. And wouldn't that be the ultimate reward? It's almost like Inspiration Peak is whispering an invitation, urging us to explore, to discover, and to embrace the beauty that's all around us.
So as you go about your day, dear listener, carry that thought with you. Let it spark your curiosity, fuel your imagination, and maybe even inspire you to plan your own adventure to Inspiration Peak.
And on that note, we've reached the summit of our deep dive into Inspiration Peak.
A huge thank you to our listeners for joining us on this adventure. We hope you found it insightful, inspiring, and maybe even a little bit magical. And if you did, be sure to spread the inspiration. Share this episode with your fellow nature lovers, hikers, and anyone who appreciates a good dose of wonder.
And don't forget to like, subscribe, and come back for more deep dives into the topics that ignite your passion. Until next time, happy exploring.